I had always thought staying in a fully automated house would be relaxing. Remote suburb, modern design, all the conveniences a man could want. The first night, though, every convenience became a complication I couldn't explain. The lights dimmed at odd intervals. The thermostat toggled between freezing cold and stifling heat without any pattern, and every camera feed on my tablet seemed just slightly delayed, like the house was watching itself more than me. Sent by Ethan R., Cedar Falls, Iowa. It started with the front door. The smart lock began cycling between locked and unlocked at random. I remember trying to leave for a late-night run and finding the door firmly closed, only for it to pop open the second I stepped away. At first, I blamed a glitch in the system. After all, the house was brand new, built to sell the illusion of perfection. By midnight, I noticed the sound. Not a creak or a mechanical hum, but a faint mimicry of my own movements. I would shuffle across the living room and hear a soft thump in a pattern identical to mine. But when I looked, nothing was there. I thought it was the floor settling or my imagination. It had to be. The first escalation was small, almost polite. The digital assistant mispronounced my name, exactly the wrong way I'd always disliked. But the voice, my own voice, slightly warped, would repeat it in quiet tones, in corners of the house where the assistant couldn't possibly reach. I tried to leave, but my phone had died inexplicably. It screened black despite a full battery before I entered the house. By the third night, the mimicry evolved. If I touched a cup of coffee in the kitchen, seconds later, a steaming cup appeared on the counter beside it, but empty. The rule became obvious in retrospect. Whatever I did, whatever I moved or interacted with, it could mimic, but only incompletely. The restriction, it would never perfectly copy me. There was always a subtle wrongness, a fraction of a second too late, a reflection off-kilter in the smart glass walls. Its signature behavior was a soft, wet scraping noise whenever it completed a mimicry. The first time I heard it close, I froze. It sounded almost like fingernails on flesh. My stomach turned, but I couldn't stop listening. The escalation pattern was methodical. Each night, the mimicking became more invasive. It wasn't just cups or movements. It started rearranging personal items subtly, leaving messages in shadows I could not explain. I found the living room couch cushions stacked in an exact, unnatural pyramid, each cushion tilted the same way I had once seen in a fleeting dream. I began documenting every anomaly, writing notes in my phone, until the next day when my tablet displayed the same notes, typed in my own handwriting, only slightly distorted, as if someone else had watched me write. I tried to leave. Every door, every exit became a challenge. The smart lock would seize just as I touched the handle, and the garage door opener refused to connect. Even the lights seemed to resist my movements. When I ran toward the front hallway, they dimmed as if to swallow me in darkness. My voice, calling for help, echoed back at me, but delayed, slightly warped. A recording of myself trapped inside my own home. The most terrifying night was the fourth. I awoke to the scraping sound beside my bed, my cup of coffee now steaming on the nightstand despite me having thrown it in the sink hours ago. I leaned over to inspect it and saw a handprint on the counter, palm pressed into the smooth granite. But I live alone. I reached for my phone, hoping desperately for a connection to the outside world, but it flickered with static. The house was laughing at me, imitating me, but not letting me escape. At that point, I realized the rule. It only mimicked what it could perceive, but the restriction was cruel. It could never fully replicate life. There was always that wrongness, the subtle distortion, the creeping feeling that I wasn't alone even when nothing was physically present. The scraping noise was like punctuation, a marker that it had observed, replicated, and judged my behavior. And with each replication, it became bolder, more confident. The escalation was no longer predictable. It began appearing in peripheral reflections in the mirrors, a shadowy silhouette moving in impossible angles, catching the corner of my vision but vanishing when directly confronted. If you're enjoying these true horror stories, make sure to subscribe to Ultra Spooky and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we upload new nightmares. By night 6, the house itself had become a trap. The thermostat fluctuated violently, the lights flickered, and the floorboards groaned with a rhythm that mirrored my heartbeat. I stopped moving through rooms on instinct. Every interaction seemed to provoke a reaction. Doors slammed gently but with timing so precise that it mimicked my own pace across the floor. I realized in horror that it could even anticipate intention. It wasn't just copying, it was observing, learning, planning the mimicry to torment me psychologically. The isolation was technological. My phone was dead, the tablet was corrupted, and no one could enter because the locks refused. Even the driveway sensor seemed to block me. The car couldn't start. I attempted to sleep, curled up under the covers, but the scraping followed me under the blankets, subtle, deliberate, repeating my own restlessness. It mimicked my tossing and turning with eerie precision. The wrongness grew more extreme. The mimicked movements became grotesque, exaggerated just enough to make me question my own muscle memory. Was I the one moving, or was the house? Every reflection, every recorded sound, every delayed digital assistant voice began to erode my grasp on reality. I left the house at dawn, sprinting down the suburban road, but when I looked back, the windows reflected the rooms as if I were still inside, moving. My apartment key was in my hand, but the house had left something behind. On the tablet screen, my own face stared back at me, lips moving in a silent scream. I realized then that even outside, the mimicry followed. That wrongness would haunt me, carried in memory and in technology, waiting for my next interaction. A faint scraping sound echoed from the woods behind the property. I didn't stop to look. It's been 3 weeks since I abandoned that house. I haven't slept properly since. Sometimes, when I move a glass or type on a keyboard, I hear that scraping sound, delayed and imperfect, always behind me. I deleted the tablet, replaced my phone, even moved apartments. But the subtle, meticulous imitation lingers in my senses. My reflection sometimes hesitates a beat too long before copying me. The thermostat in my new apartment flickers for a second, just once, exactly like that house. I don't know if it can leave the house entirely, or if it's simply embedded in the way I interact with the world now. I'm terrified that it will keep following, growing bolder with every day I use technology. And the worst part, sometimes I swear I see it standing outside my windows at night, just far enough to make me question whether I am really alone. This was just one of many terrifying true stories from the Ultra Spooky archives. Stay tuned for our next tale of horror.